All in Therapy. Chapter 1. The World Begins Small. When we first arrive in the world, everything is closer than we will ever feel again. The air is warm, the light is soft. The world is reduced to textures, sounds, smells. The quiet symphony that teaches us the earliest truths of existence. We don't yet have a sense of self, but we have a sense of belonging. We don't yet understand the meaning of comfort, but our body already knows how to lean toward it. In those early days, life isn't something we think about. Life is something we feel. The gentle sway of someone carrying us. The hush of a hand smoothing our back. The vibration of laughter before we ever understand what humor is. These sensory fragments become the beginning of our story, long before we can tell one ourselves. The first therapists. We never recognize our first therapists. They enter our lives without ceremony. They are the ones who feed us, lift us, hush us, worry over us, and sometimes fail us. They're not trained in psychology, but they shape the blueprint of how we will move through the world. They teach us what human connection feels like, not through words, but through presence. When a parent responds quickly to a cry, we learn the world is responsive. When they come slowly or inconsistently, we learn the world is unpredictable. When they come harshly, we learn the world is dangerous. Before we ever sit in a therapist's office, we sit in the emotional atmosphere created by the adults around us. This atmosphere is our first language. This language becomes our compass. The quiet shaping of the self. We often imagine childhood as a collection of memories. Birthdays, school days, holidays, the moments we remember. But childhood is far more about what we don't remember, the soft, invisible currents that shape us beneath awareness. A toddler reaching out and being lifted creates an imprint. I matter. A toddler reaching out and not being lifted creates another imprint. I must not need too much. A toddler reaching out and being punished for reaching creates yet another. My wants are wrong. These early imprints become the silent architecture of adulthood, unspoken, unexamined, and deeply powerful. We often navigate life not based on what is happening, but based on what our nervous system learned to expect long ago. We are not fragile, we are patterned. And those patterns began when our world was still small. The first lessons, unintentional and immense. The adults who raise us are doing their best with what they themselves were given. They pass down not only love but also fear. Not only support but also silence. Not only protection but also the echoes of their own unresolved childhoods. The child absorbs all of it. A parent who worries too loudly teaches a child to fear the unknown. A parent who judges too quickly teaches a child to hide their truth. A parent who loves without conditions teaches a child to trust their own worth. And even in dysfunctional homes, there are moments of beauty. Moments where love leaks through the cracks. Moments that become anchors in the storms that follow. Every human being, no matter their circumstances, receives a mixture of wounds and wisdom in the earliest years. These ingredients form the base emotional recipe we will spend the rest of our lives adjusting. The blueprint of the emotional world. A newborn doesn't know they are separate from their caregivers. Caregivers are the world, the whole of it. Their face is the sun, their voice is the wind, their presence is gravity. From this unquestioned closeness, we learn the earliest lessons of existence. How do people respond to me? How do I have to act to stay connected? What parts of me create harmony, and what parts create conflict? Where is it safe to shine? Where must I dim? These lessons are taught through the daily choreography of family life. A choreography we don't realize we've memorized until adulthood. And because children are loyal, unbearably loyal, they will adapt themselves to maintain connection at any cost. They will become quiet in noisy homes. They will become responsible in chaotic homes. They will become pleasing in lonely homes. They will become invisible in angry homes. They will become brave in uncertain homes. We think we grow out of these roles, but more often, we grow into them. The legacy we carry without knowing. Every adult is a story that began before they understood storytelling. We carry the voice of a parent in our mind when we judge ourselves. We carry the absence of a parent in our bones when we fear abandonment. We carry the protection of a parent in our instincts when we shield others. We carry the wounds of a parent in our patterns when we reenact the very things that once frightened us. And we carry their gifts too. Resilience, humor, intelligence, creativity, determination. What our parents didn't heal, they passed down. What they did heal, they passed down too. The first sphere of social therapy. Childhood is the opening chapter of the therapeutic arc of being human. And the people in that chapter serve as our first emotional teachers. Their lessons are not always gentle. Sometimes they are confusing, sometimes they are painful, sometimes they are illuminating years later, but they are always foundational. 2 stories to illustrate this. The cracked door. When he was 6, Matteo fell asleep to the sound of his parents arguing. A crack of light cut across his bedroom floor. Through that sliver, he learned to listen, carefully, quietly, fearfully. He memorized the pattern of their voices. He learned that silence could be dangerous and loudness could mean worse. As an adult, he apologized too quickly. He avoided conflict instinctively. One day he admitted, "Arguments make me feel 6 again." Recognition became the beginning of release. The Sunday breakfast. Every Sunday, Alina's grandmother made pancakes. Warm kitchen, soft humming, safety. Years later, Alina recreated those mornings whenever life overwhelmed her. She realized her grandmother had been her first therapist, not through advice but through presence. And so the story begins. Before we learn to speak, we learn to feel. Before we understand the world, we understand the people who represent it. Before we form beliefs, we form bonds. This is where healing begins, with the world small, the heart open, and the patterns forming that we will spend a lifetime unfolding. The journey continues in Chapter 2 of All in Therapy.